I'm standing at my office window on the 14th floor, staring down at the parking lot where my parents are holding handmade cardboard signs. Honestly, I've been waiting for this scene for the past 8 years. Not wishing for it in some vague way, not daydreaming about fate stepping in. I deliberately built my entire life toward this exact moment. Let me explain. I grew up in what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary middle-class home in Ohio. My parents, Norman and Deborah, had steady jobs. We lived in a nice house. Everything looked normal from the outside. My younger sister, Megan, is 2 years behind me. Here's the part nobody warns you about. Sometimes parents simply pick one child to be the scapegoat and the other to be the golden child, and there doesn't have to be any logical reason. Megan could do literally anything, and they'd call it wonderful. I could do the exact same thing, and somehow I was doing it wrong. I got straight A's, I was ungrateful. Megan got straight A's, she was brilliant. I cleaned the kitchen, I missed spots. Megan cleaned the kitchen, she was so thoughtful. By the time I was 16, I already knew something was deeply unfair. But I told myself I just had to survive until I turned 18, and then I could walk away on my own terms. I was stashing every paycheck from my grocery store job, saving for college, keeping quiet, counting the days. I thought I had everything planned out. February 12, 2017. My 18th birthday landed on a Monday. We'd gotten about 4 inches of snow overnight, and it was still falling hard. Temperature around 20 degrees. I came home from school around 3:30, stuck my key in the lock, and it wouldn't turn. I jiggled it, thinking the cold had frozen the mechanism. Still nothing. I knocked. Norman opened the door but kept the chain on. He told me to stay on the porch. Then Deborah appeared with 3 black trash bags. She set them on the ground in front of me and said these contained my clothes and a couple of personal things. I asked what was going on. Norman said they were finished raising me. I was legally an adult now, and they had met their legal duty. Deborah said I had been nothing but a drain on the family for 18 years, and they were no longer willing to spend another dime on me. She actually used the word investment and said I had been a bad one. I asked where I was supposed to go. Norman said that wasn't their concern anymore. He told me I had been pulling the family down, that I was a disease, and that life would finally improve once I was out of it. Deborah added that I was damaged goods, and they were cutting their losses. She said maybe living on the street would finally force me to become something useful, because clearly nothing they ever did worked. Then Norman looked me dead in the eyes and said I should find a dumpster to crawl into tonight. He said maybe freezing would finally teach me how to be a real man. He said even wild animals know to abandon the weak ones. Megan was watching from her bedroom window upstairs. She never came down. She never opened her mouth. She just stared. Then they shut the door and I heard the deadbolt click. There I was, standing in the snow with 3 garbage bags, no coat, wearing only jeans and a hoodie, holding a key that no longer worked. I had roughly $800 in my checking account, my phone, and whatever was inside those bags. I walked the 2 miles to the public library because I needed to get out of the cold and figure out my next move. My hands were numb by the time I got there. I found a private study room and dumped the bags out. They had grabbed random clothes, 7 t-shirts, 1 pair of jeans, socks but no boxers, my laptop but no charger, 3 textbooks but no backpack. It was like they had swept items off shelves without caring whether anything actually made sense together. Or maybe they did care, and that was the point. I spent that first night at a 24-hour diner, sipping the same cup of coffee for hours while I tried to plan. Hotels were too expensive long-term. I couldn't rent an apartment on grocery store wages, and I still had 4 months of high school left. I ended up texting Clarence, a coworker in his 30s who had always been decent to me. He let me crash on his couch for 2 months, no rent, while I finished school and hunted for something better. He said just pay it forward one day. 3 days after my birthday, Megan posted a picture on Instagram standing next to a brand new 2017 Toyota Camry with a giant red bow. Caption, "Best parents in the world. Early birthday gift, I'm so lucky, love you mom and dad." Her birthday wasn't until April. They bought her a $20,000 car 3 days after throwing me out into a snowstorm. That's when the last bit of hope I had left died. It wasn't about money being tight. It wasn't about me being a burden. They simply never wanted me. They wanted Megan to have everything, and I was the obstacle. That car could have paid for months of keeping a roof over my head while I finished high school. They chose the car. I cut them out completely that week. Deleted numbers, blocked socials, erased them. I decided I would build a life so solid, so successful, that when they eventually came looking for something, because people like that always do, I would be untouchable. I would make sure they felt every ounce of what they threw away. I worked full-time, paid my own way through community college, transferred to a state university, graduated with honors in 2021. By then, I had climbed 3 promotions at the retail management company I started with after high school. I had my own apartment, savings, and a clear path upward. Every time I wanted to quit, every time I felt sorry for myself, I replayed Norman telling me to sleep in a dumpster. I replayed Deborah calling me damaged goods. I replayed Megan's car post. In 2023, I was recruited by a large commercial real estate management firm. Better pay, better title, real authority. I started paying very close attention to who owned what buildings, who was behind on payments, who was struggling. Last month, I was promoted to senior leasing manager. Part of my portfolio includes residential properties. While reviewing delinquent accounts, I saw their names. They don't own the house they've been living in for the last 4 years. They rent it from a landlord whose entire portfolio is managed by my company, and they were 2 months behind on rent. I didn't rig this. I didn't pull strings to make it happen. I just worked my ass off for 8 years and ended up in the exact seat that gave me control over their housing. Call it fate, call it karma, call it coincidence. I call it perfect. When their names appeared on the 60-day delinquent list, I smiled for the first time in weeks. I had the authority to offer a payment plan or to begin formal eviction proceedings. I chose eviction. I filed the paperwork that morning. By afternoon, they had received the notice. I know because at 4 p.m. they showed up in my company parking lot holding signs that read, "Please help," and "Family in need." I watched from my 14th floor window. I never went down. Norman looked heavier, older, defeated. Deborah's hair had gone almost completely gray. They were driving a beat-up 2009 Ford Taurus. Megan's Camry was nowhere in sight, of course. She's in Colorado living her best life, probably pretending none of this is happening. They stood out there for 3 hours. Security never moved them because they stayed on the public strip at the edge of the lot. My phone started blowing up with calls from an unknown number. I let everyone go to voicemail. I wanted to hear exactly what excuses they had ready. Update 1, I listened to all 17 voicemails last night with a beer in my hand. Here are the highlights. The first few were Deborah sobbing, talking to some faceless property manager, begging for mercy, saying they'd been good tenants for 4 years and just needed a little more time. She never said my name. Then Norman took over, angry, threatening to fight the illegal eviction, calling the company predatory. Classic bluster. Voicemail 8 was when Deborah finally realized it was me. She said she saw my name on the paperwork and couldn't believe her own son would do this. She said family helps family. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my beer. The later messages got desperate. Promises to pay everything back, vague. We're sorry for anything we ever did that hurt you. And finally Norman threatening to tell everyone at my company that I was abusing my position for personal revenge, and that I'd lose my job. That one made me angry, not scared. They still thought threats worked on me. I showed up to work the next morning and walked right past them. They had slept in their car. New signs today. Our son works here and won't help us. At 10 a.m. HR called me in. Norman had marched inside and made a scene. I laid everything out calmly. Yes, those are my biological parents. No, I'm not breaking any rules. Here's the policy, here's the delinquency timeline. HR understood, but for optics, they suggested I hand the file to another manager. I said fine. The eviction was already rolling. At 11:30, I went down to the parking lot to get it over with. Norman charged at me, yelling that I couldn't destroy their lives. Deborah was crying, saying they made a mistake years ago. They thought I'd be okay. I was always resourceful. I asked what financial crisis in 2017 made kicking me out necessary, yet still left room to buy Megan a new car 3 days later. Norman said the car was different. Megan needed reliable transportation for college. I said I needed a home. Deborah started blaming my attitude growing up. I asked for one concrete example of anything I did that justified what they did. They had nothing. They never had anything. It was never about anything I did. They just decided I was the wrong child. I asked where Megan was and why she wasn't helping. Norman said she was just starting her career and couldn't afford it. I pointed out that I was just starting my life at 18, and that apparently didn't matter. Norman threatened that I'd never have a family again if I went through with this. I told him we already don't have one. Deborah said I had become cold and broken. I told her yes, something did break on the porch that day in the snow. Megan kept calling from Colorado. I ignored every call. They stayed until security finally forced them to leave at 3 p.m. The eviction was only the beginning. An eviction on your record makes renting almost impossible for years. They're about to learn exactly how expensive and humiliating life gets after that. Update 2: things exploded in ways I didn't predict. Wednesday night, Megan flew in from Colorado and showed up at my apartment door, crying, demanding I open up. I opened it but kept her in the hallway. She said she needed Mom and Dad to keep their house because she was planning to move back to Ohio next year and live rent-free with them while she saved for a down payment. That was her real panic, losing her free crash pad. I laughed in her face. Megan claimed they'd talked to Clarence and finally understood how bad it really was. I said an apology that comes only when you need something isn't an apology. She showed me printouts of their $53,000 in debt and said I was destroying them. I said they destroyed themselves long before I got involved. She left threatening to go public online. Thursday, they filed a formal complaint with executive management claiming I abused my position for revenge. Friday, they started going door-to-door to other tenants spreading lies that I was corrupt. They were trying to burn my career down with them. I made some calls of my own and confirmed what I already suspected. Their financial collapse started years ago. I didn't cause it. I just refused to postpone it. Saturday, Megan came back with the debt paperwork again, now admitting a lot of it was from paying for her college and expenses. She begged me to feel guilty. I didn't. Sunday, I drove past the house. Their car was already packed to the roof with boxes. They knew the fight was over. Final update: the eviction was executed yesterday. The external audit came back spotless. In fact, the auditor noted I had been more lenient than policy required. The report actually recommended the company consider action against Norman and Deborah for harassment and defamation. Management declined to sue, but the recommendation is on file. Megan's Facebook post backfired spectacularly. People who knew me from high school flooded the comments with the real story. She deleted it within 48 hours and texted me that I won. Yesterday morning, a small moving truck was in their driveway. Just the two of them loading it, no help, struggling. I watched from down the street. They looked broken. By evening, the house was empty. Their car was stuffed full of whatever they could fit. This morning, they showed up on the public sidewalk outside my building holding new signs. "Homeless family, please help, and our son works here." Their car is parked on the street, every window showing crammed belongings. They slept in it last night. Megan called from yet another new number, hysterical, saying they couldn't afford even one night in a motel. Shelters were full, and this was all my fault. I asked why she didn't pay for a room or fly them to Colorado. She said she needed her money for her own rent, and her studio was too small. I told her now she knows exactly how it felt to be told you're on your own. She begged me to let them stay with me temporarily. I told her I would sooner burn my apartment down. She asked if there was any apology big enough, any price. I said the price was paid 8 years ago when they threw me out like trash. Security has banned them from the property. Police came, spoke to them, left. They're still out there as I write this. Coworkers now know the full story. Most are supportive. Clarence texted that he's proud of me. I look down at them from the 14th floor and I don't feel guilt. I feel complete. Every promotion, every late night studying, every connection I built was for this moment. To have the power to look them in the eye and say no, and for that no to actually matter. They taught me family is conditional. They taught me love can be withdrawn the second you become inconvenient. I learned the lesson perfectly. Now they get to live it. They wanted me gone, I'm gone, and I'm finally free.